And just to give you a quick introduction into the 54321, it is going to help us, one, in the analysis, again, of breaking down and analyzing the parts of primary and secondary sources, and our ability to apply our knowledge that we've gained, that content knowledge to these documents, and really analyzing them and their importance, and but also allowing us to look at the context with which these documents were created and the impact of the documents, and then interpreting that textual evidence and the evidence that those documents provide us. In preparing to implement this in your classroom, again, it is a tool to analyze primary and secondary sources and apply our knowledge in the analysis of those sources. So what we want to do, and what we want to make sure that we do, is we want to think about those primary sources that are the most important sources in a unit, and we want to use those with the 54321 to be analyzed. Obviously, as you provide a copy of this to your students and you prepare to use it, just ensure that they understand that when we are analyzing a primary or secondary source, we have to look at all the parts, and this is a tool to do that. And so that's going to help us get to the essence of why this was created, the purpose of this document, the impact of this document, and apply the knowledge we've acquired to this document. I'll come back to that in just a second. So this is the 54321. I do want us to look here. Anytime we have a strategy where you're going to have many parts to it, the first thing I would say that I like to do, and I think is a smart thing to do, and I've heard a lot of other teachers do, is to have an annotation system. Each part of this strategy gets a different highlighter color, or however that is you want to do that. But know some way that you're going to have, as you go through this primary and secondary document, that they're going to be able to annotate the information and then be able to pull it out and put it where it needs to go. So then they can, at the end, they can make that final conclusion, or in this strategy, that final claim that we're going to work up to through this document. So I want us to look at really quickly. At the top, we have what's being analyzed, the source, or you can even hint kind of just, or at the topic, or just if you want to. But obviously, the source that's being analyzed and what we're looking at as a whole here. So we start by just dissecting this document. We want to look at important terms, phrases, people, places that apply and have a relationship to this document, and can be related to why the analysis of this document. Again, when you first start with this, these should be able to be found probably in the text. Okay, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that, all of that here in just a second when I show you my example responses. And instead of giving them the options of phrases and people and all of that, maybe that's too much. You have to, you say, this is where I want your terms, and then you build on that from there. And so, but not only that we can identify them in the text, we can put them down, but then we can describe the relationship of why those are important to what's being analyzed. And so to give you just some understanding here, we're going to go back one slide. This is the document that I chose to kind of demonstrate this with. It's by Mr. Frederick Engels. He very much supported Karl Marx and the development of his Communist Manifesto. But what the document is a description by Mr. Engels of the life of factory workers and working class people in the cities of England, and mainly Manchester, England. And so it's not a long document, but it's a good one, and it's one that I use when I'm teaching Industrial Revolution, just and we're looking at the different movements that are going to come out of this industrialization period. So I like it, but I think it's a good one for describing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and how we're going to use it to analyze a source. And so if we move forward here, and I do have to do some forward and back movement just to show you, but here's kind of the example of my answers. And I've provided 5, if you notice, 5 different terms or a phrase and a place. We're going to look at that. So let's start with actually this one. I'm going to come back to urbanization in just a second. But one of my terms that I put down in the 5 part is actually a place, Manchester, England. This is what the document is talking about. This is this main city that it's addressing. It's an industrial city, and so it has a relationship to the document being analyzed. Speaks in the informational aspect of the text before you get into his actually written work of the connection later on to communism and the development of the Marx and his Communist Manifesto. Industrialization is mentioned in that information aspect there. That he's writing in part to the effects of industrialization. And then we know that the title and the information at the top lets us know about poor living conditions, the factory workers. That's a group that's being addressed here. And then this is a word that's not necessarily in the text. And while it may be a while before you get them pulling in terms you've already talked about, that's awesome if they made that connection. I just wanted you to know that they can draw from, hey, we've talked about urbanization. We're looking at the effects of urbanization as in the Industrial Revolution, as people move into cities to work in factories. This is the living conditions they're living in. And so urbanization is playing a huge role in that. And so I put that word there, even though it's not found specifically in the text. The rest of these are. And students could highlight those and then transfer those over into the document, and it would stay organized like that. But it's okay if they pull from, again, that background knowledge. We're applying the knowledge we have. It's an application strategy to the document we're analyzing. So that's something you want to see, definitely. All right. Then we have 4. So list 2 events that caused or led to what is being analyzed. So what led to this document? What are some things that were going on? It could be specific events that are found, again, right in the writing itself, or they could think about what's you've already talked about and how it applies to why this was created. And so just to give you some examples, again, we've got a cause: mass urbanization into cities creates overcrowding and poor living conditions. Effects: social reform movements seek to improve working and living conditions of the working class. Okay. Cause: lack of pay and poor living conditions create large separation between the haves and the have-nots. Inequality: effect: inequality between different classes of people are brought to light by those seeking change. And so again, those are both connected. So I want to go back really quickly. And what I want to do is I want to point out this part. They do not have to be related. Mine were related because that's what your students are going to do as we learn cause and effect. The first thing they're going to do is look for causes and effects that relate to each other, specifically in the text where it said this happened and this was the result of it. Boom, boom. This caused this. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But we also understand that there can be a cause for why this was created, and the effect doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to the cause for why this document was created in the first place. So they don't have to be related. They can be, but that's the 4 part, is your cause and effect. Okay. Then we want to look at the 3. Okay. So now we get a little specific. 3 people or groups that are related or connected to this document in some way. And so for mine, instead of flipping back and forth, I put, of course, working class. I put Engel. I mean, they're going to put the author, the person creating it. You may could put they're again, students are probably going to put what's in the document. You may have someone who thinks outside, and then Karl Marx was mentioned. And again, if students do, that's great. If they think, even though they're not mentioned, it's going to impact this group. That's awesome too. And just how these ideas are leading and eventually supporting what's going to happen in that movement. And so again, but we need to make a connection. What is the connection? Why did you put that? Okay. But they're going to look for names, and that's okay. Highlight them, put them in there. Let's make why are they important to this document and what's being created. Then with the quotes, and by quotes, write 2 quotes from that text that helps to clarify what we're analyzing. And I picked 2 that talked about those living conditions. If you'll look back on, if we look at this, not this slide here, there's my kind of 4 and 3. There's 2 right there. Let me move this out of the way for you guys. Move it up here. Okay. And I put 2 quotes that really help me understand that that's just what we're looking at. We're looking at the living conditions there of industrial cities and the working class and what it's like to live in those industrial cities. And then you get to your claim, and I want to go back just to what it says about the claim and make sure we understand claim, argument, or assertion regarding the impact or significance of the document being analyzed and the event surrounding it. And so if we look at that, I put the primary source by Engel as an impactful document for the time period of the Industrial Revolution. This source made public the inequality brought about by industrialization. Articles like this help lead to reform movements that address such inequalities. And so it's addressing, again, what's the reports of the document, what's going on around the document, and they really get an idea of why this is important. And you've got that in-depth analysis of not only just the document itself, but its importance within the context of the historical period with which you're studying. Just some things you can do for differentiation. Sharing images, charts, graphs, photographs that kind of build background knowledge so they can kind of guide students, supplementary material that might help with in analyzing and looking at the documents they're looking at and providing that background knowledge. You might, like we said in the 5, you might provide some or all of the terms. You might provide some or all of the people, a cause, and then have them come up with an effect. Limiting some of that, chunking the strategy again. Doing it, doing the activity in groups. Again, I do, we do, you do. Just explicit instruction. Go with that model. For advanced students, maybe go beyond the assigned text and then link it back to what are some other things we've studied. Let's go back to previous units. And then again, maybe they have to identify terms that aren't identified in the reading that also apply to this. That's why I included urbanization where I did. And so, again, a great strategy for just breaking down and analyzing those primary sources and really understanding why those were created when they were created and understanding the importance. Again, it's very useful, very impactful in a classroom. You're gonna have to break it down, but once students get to rolling with it, it's going to create a great platform for looking in depth at primary sources.